20 years ago, this summer, Harris Hall was opened in August of 1993. What we've seen in the 20 years is, it's nothing short of remarkable. The performance I remember more vividly than anything is Renee Fleming singing Sam Barber's Knoxville, summer 1915.
The two that really stand out for me was the Schumann D minor sonata that we played.
Right. We played Beethoven's 8th Symphony, and the hall was filled to capacity. It was black tie, and it was really one of the most marvelous evenings of my career.
My first experience in the hall, of course, was opening week. And I believe it was Harth who conjured up the idea of a Goldberg sponsoring the Goldberg Variations.
I heard the Emerson play in here for the first time. It gave me goosebumps then, and I probably had some tears too.
The Tsontakis Quartet by all 6 Bartók quartets. That was an incredible experience.
Wu Han and Finckel playing through all those cello sonatas, so many.
And you know, a hall like this that you play in many times, it becomes like a second home. You know, it's not only you're familiar with everything, but it's where you reveal your true self.
This is a world-class facility. It's better than a new dress.
I think this is not a hall that just passes you by. I think, guest artists who come here for the first time and play just absolutely, it's love at first sight. They just love it.
It's probably the best percussion hall in the world.
As brass players, we depend so much upon the space that we're in. And this place, this Harris Hall, it really is one of the great chamber music halls in the entire world.
It's got a beautiful clarity and projection and warmth. So for me, it's been a joy as a guitarist being able to play in a place where I don't need hardly any acoustical reinforcement.
Digital media is now in here, so things are not only being heard here, but they're going out from here all over the world.
The beauty of this hall is carried far, far away to millions of people to enjoy, and that's going to continue into the future.
This hall began as a dream. It was my job to try to raise the money. I don't know how I get handed that job from time to time, but I do. And we had a very wonderful dinner for possible contributors one night. Harry Teague brought a model.
And in the middle of the dinner, I was instructed to show people the model and explain the building and so on. I'd probably had a couple of glasses of wine, so I was nice and loose. I pulled the model apart and I said, "I'd like to introduce you to the tomb of the unknown donor."
Which we thought was very funny, and nobody spoke up. On the way home, Irving Harris was postulating about, who do you think would like to have this thing named? We didn't come up with anything, but we went home, went to sleep that night, got up early the next morning, and got on the plane to go to Chicago. As the plane landed, he said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you something." "What's that, dear?" He said, "I figured out who can name the hall." I said, "Really? Who?" He said, "We can."
Joan and Irving were the best kind of clients. They were engaged. They were thoughtful. They did consider the design, but never tried to contain it.
He likened what he planned to do to an excavation.
Part of the idea was that this was a metaphor, that this gigantic instrument was buried in the ground and it was being uncovered, it was being excavated. And that's a physical thing. But it's also a metaphorical thing in that the repertoire, the great repertoire of classical music gets re-examined over and over again by each subsequent generation.
The first time we laid eyes on this place during construction, we were escorted around the premises by Edward Sweeney and Robert Harth.
The construction site was a big hole in the ground, and we put on hard hats, went through the construction site. It was just a shell and beams, and it was kind of cool. We actually felt like we might have real jobs.
I remember being a little mystified about it being in the ground at first. But I thought, oh well, we won't have trouble with airplanes flying overhead. That's a good thing. Maybe we can even record in the hall. That would be fabulous.
And we were looking upwards out of this hole in the ground in what was to become a spectacular concert hall. None of us really had any idea what was going to happen, other than this was going to be a magnificent structure in which music was going to be well served.
Really something to be in this place even before the inaugural concert.
We did have the opportunity to come in and be the first ensemble to make any music in this hall, and it was very tense because this was the test of the hall. I figured I have to diffuse this somehow, so I said, look, when we go to play, let's just, for the first moment, let's just hold the bows above the string and not make any sound and see what happens. We went like this, and absolutely no sound came out at all. And there was I don't know how many seconds of the most horrifying silence you ever heard in your life. And the first one to realize what was happening was Joan, who burst out laughing, and then the whole room just dissolved into total hysterics.
Well, I unfortunately missed the famous non-touching the bow event that happened by about 5 minutes. I arrived afterwards and walked into the hall, and everybody was in tears.
Once the tension was broken, everybody kind of moved together. And I saw people holding hands, and Billy, the construction manager, was crying. It was just an exceptional moment that we knew then that this would be the Carnegie Hall of the West.
Unless you build another exact Harris Hall, I don't think it'll ever be surpassed for chamber music.
We are beyond fortunate, beyond blessed to have this hall.
I mean, if I have to be really honest, it's one of my 2 or 3 favorite halls in the world to play, and I would put it up there with, with the Wigmore Hall in London and so on. It's a great pleasure.
This concept of a hall that really could rank internationally has changed, I think, the whole face of the festival.
I think every great city deserves a great concert hall like this, and Harris Hall certainly set an example.
All the students, when they have a space like this, something about the space wants them to rise to the occasion. Somehow the shape and the meaning of the space gives them some sort of inspiration.
Harris Hall has sort of kept up with the whole evolution of the festival because it's just broadened the dimension so much and the possibilities for us and for our students.
I think the word outside of Aspen, around the country is, if you're the Fellowship Quintet at Aspen, you're going to get a really special experience. You're going to perform with ABQ, but you're going to be in a beautiful space, and I think that's done a lot of good for the brass program, brought a lot of really wonderful young people here.
When I hear my students play here, it's also, I really have a sense of who they are at this moment and what their potential is, who they can become from seeing them on this stage and hearing them on this stage.
It's a little mountain town. It's kind of hard to get to, but what you do on this stage really matters for your career.
The Challenge Grant, which is something we often like to do, is designed to encourage other people to step up and take ownership in Harris Hall so that 20, 40, 60 years from now, it will still be here as a great venue.
Joan is such a true philanthropist. She's always thinking about how her giving and others' giving can have the greatest possible impact. That was true from the beginning when she and Irving created this hall. And it's been true over the years as she's seen the importance of the hall, but also over 20 years has seen the need to maintain it. So now she challenges the community to join with her in creating a fund that will do just that.
No matter how well a building is made, it's always going to need some sort of TLC along the way.
A very important lesson that we learned from Carnegie Hall in New York was that you have to take care of a hall all the way through, and even the greatest of halls can fall into disrepair, even to the point that people wonder if they're viable. So this is the importance of our project now, is that 20 years from now, 40 years from now, 60 years from now, 100 years from now, this will be a great hall because it will have been cared for.
It seemed very important to me not only to ensure the longevity and the healthy life of this hall, but to ensure that programming continued.
I mean, music does not just go on in the summer. It ought to go on all year round.
One of the great benefits of having the hall immediately was that we could have winter concerts, and this had never been possible. Our winter series is small but very select, and it draws an audience that is truly devoted to winter music.
The winter concerts have become a very, very important asset for the people who live in Aspen.
It's a long, dark winter here, and those of us who love classical music, that's a long space to go without.
You get a sense that they've been a little bit starved and deprived, especially in relation to the way that the summer is. And so there's a kind of a hunger and an eagerness where people will come up to you and say, "Oh, thank you so much for coming."
Joan's gift now will also endow in perpetuity our ability to give those winter concerts.
It keeps the festival flame alive all year round, and I think that's a great asset to the community.
Joan Harris is just one hell of a dame. She finds something that interests her in the world of music without regard to whether there's any luster or excitement associated with it or public acclaim, and quietly and privately finances it.
We've benefited so much from her largesse, her generosity.
It's really people like Joan Harris who keep music alive.
And it's very inspiring for people who are in a position to support the arts that they do something like this.
Philanthropy, another simple word for it is advocacy.
Thank you.
And you're welcome.
It's quite likely that 20 years from now, Harris Hall will still be a jewel in the crown of the Aspen Music Festival and School.
I'm sure that Harris Hall will continue to be one of the cornerstones of the Aspen Music Festival and School. I think it represents the quality that we want to offer our students, an acoustic environment that is second to none. And this is going to continue to nurture the arts. We need it so badly and we need it so often, and Harris Hall stands as a monument for that support.
It really takes, like Joan has mentioned, a whole village of visionary supporters to carry that mission through. And Aspen Music Festival has been the mecca for a community like that. And I can say it on behalf of all the musicians, we're extremely grateful.
Where this hall will be, it'll be here. But what it will be doing in 20 years is really up to the next generation. It's up to the people who are now students and members of the faculty and the new board, which will be here in 20 years from now. It's a very, very great responsibility, and I feel certain that all of the players involved will live up to it.